introduce our speaker. By way of introduction, we are so delighted to have Dr. Cheryl Woodson here with us. We have her, she is such a dynamic person to learn and such a great teacher and someone we can learn so much about. She's taught and practiced geriatric medicine for almost 40 years while raising a family and caring for a parent with dementia. She's board certified in internal medicine, geriatrics, and healthcare quality management, and has served on the medical faculty at the University of Chicago and Northwestern University. She is an accomplished author and speaker on the topics of support for family caregivers and encouraging women to take better care of themselves. And she's going to be speaking with us today on resilience, something I'm sure we're all feeling the need for as we start another year in the pandemic. So her topic is resilience in the year ahead. So welcome, Dr. Woodson, and we'll turn the spotlight onto you now.
Well, thank you so much for having me. We're going to pray for the tech, people. We're going to pray for the tech. Okay, good.
Yeah, we're seeing your screen.
Yeah, good. Why that's happening, I don't know. Okay. I'm a techno cripple. We're going to talk about resilience in the time of COVID. I have no disclosures. None of the programs I talk about am I financially involved with. Nobody's paying me. This is just from my heart. And what we want to do is talk about what the challenges are we face in the pandemic, why we're vulnerable, and I want to explore practical ways to have resilience. Now, COVID rocked us in the last 2 years. It rocked our routine. You know, we couldn't go to church. We couldn't go to theater. We couldn't hang out with our friends. All the things we used to be able to do, our volunteer work, all got rocked. And many of us felt like our freedom was impinged on. You know, you couldn't just get up and go to the grocery store or get up and go to the mall like you wanted to. And it really stressed our relationships because we couldn't see our grandchildren. We couldn't visit with our friends as much as we had wanted to. And for some of us, being sequestered together enlightened us about some problems that maybe we hadn't been thinking about, and many relationships were COVID casualties. It affected our finances. Even if we weren't working, we often found ourselves supporting younger people who weren't working, even people who moved back into our homes, and that was a disruption in our lives. And our expectations about what we thought we were, you know, what we thought we could depend on, the things we thought defined us. And all of this really rocked our sense of security. And that is one of the dangers and one of the things, like Lucas was talking about, resulted in some behavioral health problems, but physical health problems as well. We're vulnerable primarily because of isolation. And this is something else that you all are talking about, like having your chat afterwards is very important. But it's social isolation as well as what I call operational isolation. The other problem we have is that we are not moving as much. And as they say, sedentary is the new smoking in terms of increasing your risk of heart disease and other blood vessel diseases. We're vulnerable primarily, I think, because of fear. You know, we are afraid of change. And so some of us worship sameness. You know, we want to keep everything the same. And things that don't change don't grow. And things that don't grow don't live. So that is a very dangerous way to look at things. We accept the comfort of familiar discomfort. I mean, even if what was going on wasn't so wonderful, we don't want to change anything else. And that also adds to our stress. But we also fail to find the fun. You know, the very first family gathering we had after everybody was vaccinated, my son took the recycling out and lost control of the bin and it went down the chute. And we had a belly laugh about that and teased him about it for the rest of the day. So we fail to look for the little humor in our everyday lives while we're looking at what's changed so much. What is resilience? Resilience is being able to take a hit and figure out a way to get up and fly. However you end up doing that. It's taking a hit and being able to get back up. The only thing that stays the same is that things change. So what we have to do is we have to be flexible, because they also say that blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape. And that's really important to understand. I think the very first part of resilience is acceptance. It's accepting that something is different, because when we don't accept it, we become rigid. And when the wind blows, things that are rigid break. I know of a gentleman who was an IT executive, international businessman, successful financier, who in retirement was an avid yoga practitioner. He was doing volunteer work. He was sitting on boards. He was mentoring students. And when COVID happened, all of that stopped. And he was not able to accept that it was different. And so when opportunities arose for him to do things that would continue to give him joy, he couldn't pivot. His yogi did online classes, but he couldn't watch them or join in because he wanted to be in the room. He couldn't mentor students, even though with virtual learning, the mentoring was even more needed. But he wanted to be physically in the room with the students. And since he couldn't, he wasn't able to do that. And he ended up doing crossword puzzles and Sudoku and micromanaging his partner. And that relationship did not last. So he was not able to find the joy that he could find because he couldn't accept that things were different. Now, it is what it is. Does not mean giving up or quitting. It's giving in. It's just accepting that this is the reality and I need to make a change or decide that I'm not going to, but there is something different about the situation. We do need to grieve what's lost. It's not, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, start all over again. It's not that. You do need to grieve and give yourself license and permission and grace to grieve. But what you don't want to do is ruminate over it. You grieve it, but then you try to find ways to move on. Always be flexible. Don't stop trying. And note that this is the new normal this minute. Whatever this is right now is the new normal. Okay, what's next? And try to look forward. I also want you to look back. My father dropped dead 2 weeks after I started medical school. And I'm still here. If that didn't break me, what can? My daughter almost died in 2014, and I'm still here. All of us have been through adversity that we survived. The old Mahalia Jackson song, "My soul looks back and wondered how I got over." Look back. What have you already survived? Look at all of the adversity that you have survived and thrived through, and you're still here and you're still you. You're still the same person with the same faith, with the same resources, ability to pull together support and information. You haven't changed. So if those things did not break you, the pandemic really can't. You still have those resources and those strengths. I want you to look back and see them. It gives you confidence to go forward. I also need you to look up. Plan A didn't work. What's plan B? And we know what didn't work. So instead of ruminating on that, let's think about what can work. Can you visit your yogi on television? Or when the weather got better, they were actually doing yoga classes in the park across from where this gentleman was living. He couldn't do that because he couldn't make the switch. So what can work? And remember that it is dangerous to worship sameness because things that don't change die and wither. So we appreciate how it was. We grieve that it's not that way anymore, but we can't stay back there. It's not going to be the same. It's going to be different. And accepting that makes resilience possible. So what you do, this is a business model, but I think it works for this. The crisis is that the pandemic happened and it's real. We accept it is real. Things are not the way they used to be. And then it's decision time. Are we going to not change and wither, or are we going to take the risk to change and grow? And once you make that decision to grow, that's your turning point. It's time to bounce. And look at opportunities that will help you create joy. That's where your creativity, your innovation, you brainstorm with your friends in your group to find out what could possibly give you the joy that you can get. It may not be the same joy you had before this, but there is joy, there is humor, and this creativity helps you find opportunities to deal with that. And once you choose one, you try it. And if it doesn't work, you go back and look for more opportunities hit your group and find out what everybody else is doing, get ideas about what you can be doing, and you try again. And you keep doing that. Things aren't going to always work, but if you keep doing that, you will find some joy. And that's what we're looking for, is joy. I think we fight social isolation by finding regular times to connect. Get your vaccinated friends, 2 or 3 of you, and go to Panera and have breakfast. You know, we used to call it Romeo's, retired older men eating out, where guys would, the vets would meet for breakfast. You can do this in a safe way, in the way things are going now. You're not going to get 20 people, but 2 or 3, 4 people, you may be able to do that. When the weather is good, walk together. Have porch and driveway chats where you can actually be together, socially distant, but to really communicate and share your spirit with each other. The tech savvy, there are internet support group, book clubs, meetups. You can even start a meetup for something you're interested in online. AARP has classes about cooking, about how to fix your toaster. Anything is a community that they are putting together. And if you really are tech savvy, there are Zooms, Google Meets, Amazon Prime Video. You can have movie nights and set that up with your family. There's ways to connect, but it needs to be regular. And not just when you get so frustrated about being alone, but regular, so that you can look forward to it and it gives you a way to anticipate some joy. Even if that particular day is not great, we're having movie night on Friday.
Like today, what do you call it? This is Village. Okay, what else can you talk about?
Say that again? I'm sorry.
Marcia, did you have a question?
No.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry. To fight social isolation, we're finding regular times to connect, but those of us who aren't tech savvy, there's always the phone. I mean, families have been doing phone prayer lines, communications on a regular basis before the pandemic. You can always say that we're going to touch base Tuesday and Thursday morning, or however you want to set it up. Even if you don't have major tech savviness, you can always use the phone. That's really important. For operational isolation, you have to recruit help. And we know how to live in communities. I mean, kids may live in an apartment building and never talk to anybody, but we were raised in neighborhoods. We know how to do it. I had to pick up my son and take him to an urgent doctor appointment, and I parked in his little community in somebody's spot. And when we came out, she had blocked me in. I went and knocked on her door. I apologized. I told her what I needed to do. She came out, moved her car. She was in scrubs, and I found out she was a nurse. I thanked her so much for being online. And when I was driving away with my son, he said, "She talks?" I said, "Yeah, you talk to her, she talks to you." I mean, we know how to do that, to recruit help by creating community. Family, neighbors, your grandchildren, other people's grandchildren. Houses of worship have youth groups and ministries, community organizations, and volunteers, and delivery services. We can do things. In my community that I live in now, there is a board, and we match up people who need things with people who are willing to do things. I have grocery shopped for people. Other people have picked up folks' laundry, taken stuff to the post office. And for delivery services, if there are 2 or 3 of you in a building or in a neighborhood, you can pool resources, have everybody's groceries delivered, and share the cost. It's just going back to how we were raised in communities, not isolated even in the same building. We know how to do that in a way that younger folks may have forgotten, but the operational isolation, there are ways to do this. The other thing you have to do is move. And again, when the weather's good, there's socially distant walking and outdoor exercise programs. If you have a Medicare Part C program, Medicare Advantage program, Renew Active is what used to be Silver Sneakers. And in addition to paying for health club memberships, there are all kinds of classes online where you can do resistance or cardio or dance or whatever you want to do. But if you don't have any of that, a 5-pound bag of sugar is a 5-pound weight. A 2-pound can of beans is a 2-pound weight. If there is a television show like the news that you're watching every day, that's 30 minutes. For the first week, you're going to walk on the show and sit on the commercials. The next week, you're going to walk on the show and the commercials for 5 minutes, then 7 minutes, then 9 minutes, until you can walk the whole time. If you have a long haul, you can walk up and down your hall, but there are things that you can do just to keep yourself moving. And that is the most important thing, because being immobile, it causes joint dysfunction, but it also works against diabetes management. It makes your weight harder to control, and those things affect your blood pressure, your cholesterol, and your heart disease. So it's really important, no matter what, to make sure that you get up and move. And you don't have to do a lot. You just have to do more than you were doing, and do it on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be every day. If you can do 20 minutes a day, that's great, but at least 3 or 4 times a week, you need to be doing some actual movement. If you can get resistance bands and weights, that's fine. But again, whatever's in your cupboard is heavier than what you were carrying. So it's really important to find ways to move. What they say is that life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. You know, this is just a whole new way of doing things than what we were used to. And it's not going to change. There is a documentary on PBS Documentaries called The Plague that talks about what happened in the 1300s. And it points out that it lasted 3 years. It came back every 10 years. And there are changes in our society that we are dealing with that still are happening because of what happened then. So this is not going to go away. We have to find ways to live through it and thrive through it and find joy despite it. This book, Dear Lauren Love Mom, is my 31 days of affirmations. And 2 of the affirmations are up is that way, and that courage is not the absence of fear. Nobody's asking you not to be afraid of what's happening. We're asking you to do it afraid and to think positively that we're going up. There's ways to do this. You want to change and grow or ruminate and wither. Those are the only 2 choices that we have. Use past experience to build confidence. If my father's death didn't keep me from graduating from medical school, I can deal with being in this pandemic. You want to find and focus on the fun, on things that make you happy, things that are just funny, things that are silly, and try to really focus on that. Use hope to create joy. You can do this. If you could do what you did before, you can do this. You had joy through all that adversity. Despite that, nobody said there weren't scars, but you were able to smile after that. We can do that again. Connection, 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 whether it's in person or on the phone or through electronics, whatever it is, you want to make sure you're not socially isolated or immobile. You want to move as much as you can. If something doesn't work, try something else. You know, be flexible and don't stop trying. Don't choose this. Don't do like the gentleman did who was an international financier who ended up sitting and just doing Sudoku and crossword puzzles and completely disintegrating. This is not what you want. This is my 92-year-old aunt.
Oh my God.
I took these pictures in December, and this is after she had a major surgery. So she is back to doing 14 of the 17 laps she did every day. She doesn't give up. And that's her in lotus position. If you want to go to my website, you can download a chapter called How to Live Out Loud and Age Excellently, which is basically dedicated to her. But she is profoundly hard of hearing. She taught 3 line dancing classes a week before the pandemic. And if her hearing were better, she would go back to teaching line dancing. When she was in rehab after her surgery, she scheduled herself for a trip through the Panama Canal. Again, she's 95 years old. It can be done. So what we wanted to do was talk about resilience in the time of COVID and describe the challenges. The challenges are isolation, immobility, and our fear of change, and our need to hold on to things that may no longer be functional for us, may no longer be possible, and cause us a lot of stress. And to look at those vulnerabilities of isolation and fear and figure out ways to get around that. And I think we've discussed that. I'd like to hear some of your ideas. And if we have some time at the end, I'll give you some more resources that can be really helpful to you. So I'm going to stop here and let's get the conversation going. Who's got ideas on how we can address this, particularly the fear? I'm sure you have people around you who are not handling this as well as you. What are you telling them?
So if you want to ask the question, you can unmute yourself, you can raise your hand, or you can type in the chat function. You can type your question in the chat function. Any questions or comments for Dr. Woodson? We're a quiet group today.
Well, in addition to being part of this group, how are you interacting with people who are not part of this group? What have you been able to do to maintain your relationships? Now, I used to be a teacher, so if you don't talk to me, I'm gonna call on somebody. You don't want that, right? So
Oh,
please.
this is
Hello.
Rebecca. Hi, thank you so
Hi.
much. That was really helpful. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, you asked, besides this group, what I've been able to do. And I was part of a book club, as so many people are, and a film group before the pandemic hit. And these were groups, of course, that met in person, and they had a whole social component as well as reading books and watching movies. We also drank wine and ate good food and talked. But we've managed to keep them going with Zoom. And it's certainly not what we would prefer, but we're keeping it going, and we've done it now for a couple of years. And I think those have been wonderful resources for all of us. I know Barbara Norris, you joined recently, right? Our book club.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did.
And it's just been a wonderful source of of support. And but I had a question for you, Dr. Woodson, if I could. One of my sources of what you call fear or anxiety is that within the period since COVID started, I've been diagnosed with a number of health problems that I didn't have before, or at least I wasn't aware of them. And a couple of them are going to need surgeries or interventions of one kind or another. And of course, everything's kind of on hold right now. I mean, even my doctors only want to meet virtually, and this is creating a certain level of anxiety in me because, my feeling is, how long can I delay?
I think you're right. I mean, it makes sense that that would be very scary for you. And what I'm asking is if you can turn anxiety into activism. The reason this is a problem is because so many people are not vaccinated. Vaccinations were never intended to prevent disease. They're intended to prevent illness that blocks up our hospitals.
Right.
And that is what the problem is. I mean, I know the First Amendment is wonderful, but you're right, stop at my nose. It's okay for you to kill yourself, but killing other people, not just through spreading the disease, but by having no resources for people who need biopsies and colonoscopies and other things. So
Right.
if we can maybe channel some of that very justified and understandable anxiety into really pushing to get more people vaccinated, I think that will be helpful. Because your story is not political, it's not anything that anybody can turn into something negative. It's like, I need you to get vaccinated to help people like me. It doesn't
Right.
matter what party affiliation they are at. It's just like, it's people like me, your family members who need colonoscopies. All of your people can be helped if you will get vaccinated. The fact that all of these children are dying is because they're surrounded by people who are not vaccinated. So turning anxiety into activism is how I would put that.
So with activism, you mean just trying to in people that we come into contact with, talk with them about this on Facebook.
Or working with community agencies on their phone banks, calling people about getting vaccinated. Really, if you have a blog or you have in some kind of communication, to really put it out there. I mean, I did that and got trolled horribly, but it didn't matter. I mean, it's more people talking about it. And I think when we do things like that, it erodes some of that sense of helplessness, I think.
Okay, thank you very much.
How do other people feel about that?
Susan, you have your hand up.
Well, yes, first, Dr. Woodson, I thank you very much. I think this is very
Thank you.
inspiring. I would only add, maybe you already said this. In some ways, we've managed to survive. We've found ways of dealing, but I think we need to continue to push ourselves. This isn't, getting by is not enough. We have to keep going. And I also would like to toss out, see what you think about. I don't like the idea of putting ourselves on hold. For example, I signed up to go on a trip to France in March. Now, a lot of people say this is not a wise thing to do, and maybe it shouldn't, maybe I'll end up not doing. But as you say, we need to be flexible. So I am still committed to going on that trip in the hopes that maybe I'll still be able to go. And I just wonder.
Well, like I'm on the board of the National Council on Aging, and our next meeting was supposed to be in February, the first week of February. And I have a really good friend in LA, and I was going to tack on a couple of days. We were going to go to a spa. None of that's happening. But the joy of planning it and saying, okay, well, maybe we can do it in March, or maybe we can do it in May. That's really helpful. And we've been talking back and forth. So yes, the flexibility, but also eking the joy out of it. What are you learning about where you're going? What were you reading to try to get yourself ready to do that? You can still get that joy out of it, even though we may not be able to go. I agree with you completely. Don't stop.
Yeah,
Don't stop.
well, and also too, I mean, we are older adults. We only have so much time left. We don't just stop. We're going to make the best use of the time that we have left, I think.
Right. And in any way that we can, we're going to get the joy that we can. If we can't travel, are we going to read about the place? Are we going to think about what we'll do when we get there? Plan, like I'm supposed to go to Spain in October. I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I always wanted to learn about the Ottoman influence in El-Andalus. I'm reading about it. So if I don't go this time, when I'm ready to go, I'll have even that much more background to draw on.
So Laurel, you're next, and then Ellie, I'll call on you after Laurel.
Okay, I just want, yes, Dr. Woodson, thank you so much. You're wonderful as
Hey,
always.
Laurel.
Hi. I just wanted to say, I don't know if people will find this useful, but I know people complain about Zoom fatigue. I think Zoom is the best thing that ever happened to me, because I have caregiving responsibilities and I can't always get out of the house. And now I can go to a meeting or a gathering or a thing any time of the day or night. I don't have to worry about getting somebody in here. I don't have to worry about how my hair looks in back. I don't have to worry about what shoes I have on. I can just be there with other people. I don't have to worry about where I'm going to park. I love it. So if you can turn your attitude about Zoom around, it's really got a lot of blessings hidden in it. So
another thing that's great is Prime Video has a way for you to watch movies with people. And that my kids and I have done that, pop popcorn, but I've actually watched a movie with somebody on the phone. They were watching it in their living room. I was watching it. We were talking about it. Has anybody seen Encanto? It's a new Disney movie. Oh my God, you'll love it. You will love it. I cried through the whole thing. It was wonderful.
Wow.
So I watched that on the phone
Ellie?
with my daughter.
Ellie Hall, you had your hand up.
Yes, I was also agreeing that there are positives to Zoom. And like, for example, I belong to a small computer club. We're really friends, but 2 of our members moved out of that state, 2 of our most active ones. But now that we're on Zoom, people, a member in New York, Michigan, and also in the UK can participate. And so it's a real plus to have Zoom. And also with Zoom, I was able to attend a meeting of a historical society in Maine. So there, I hope that even after the pandemic, some things will be available on Zoom. With my church, somebody who moved to Milwaukee is attending church services. There are just a lot of pluses to Zoom.
I agree. And I think after the pandemic, it's not going to go back. I mean, I'm doing a lot of presentations on Zoom because they don't have to fly me anywhere. They don't have to put me up overnight. All they have to do is, send my fee and I do the presentation and that's it. So I think a lot of companies are not going back. I see several hands. Barbara, you're queen of that part.
Yeah, so Lucas, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. I think very much to kind of reiterate and reinforce what Ellie was saying too is I have been striving throughout the past couple of years to concentrate on, I mean, maybe this is a terribly privileged stance, but to concentrate on the good, the silver lining that has come out of some of this situation that we're in. And including, right, that I think the greater connectivity and access for some of us who do have the joy of broadband internet at home, and access to just a wealth of online engagement that hadn't really existed. Cultural enrichment was not as profoundly available online. But then also, I mean, I feel in some regards, I've almost become closer with some people, having regular Zoom check-ins or other or telephone calls and such, people that I may only have seen maybe once a year previously, but now we've set up a regular check-ins. And so while I think my overall network of contacts and friends that I've been seeing has maybe diminished, I think really I've felt a stronger connection to a few core individuals. And then just one last real quick thing is, again, to reinforce as we move forward, the phrasing that I hear to kind of go back to the way things were, return to normalcy, is something that I tried not to reinforce, because again, we're talking about a new normal, and the way things were wasn't necessarily great for everybody. And so, like, the idea of accessibility to so many additional resources, maybe through the magnification of the terrible inequalities and inequities that we have had, the great spotlight that's been shown on so much, I think is just very helpful. So returning to the way things were again just is not necessarily a good thing for all. Yeah.
Well, again, I want to point you at that documentary about the plague, and about we're still feeling repercussions from something that happened in the 1300s. But in addition to connectivity outside of ourselves, I think there's been a big connectivity inside. You know, in a lot of ways, COVID slowed us down, so we had to stop running from some stuff and really had to look at relationships and activities and ways that we want to be on the planet that we didn't have time, or we were able to ignore. And we haven't been able to ignore that because we had to slow down. And that, I think that has been a real interesting piece for a lot of people. And what do I really want?
Laura, and then Terry, and then Kathy. Laura?
Yeah, I belong to a number of groups. My social life tends to center around various groups that I belong to. And I've, several of them have just not been happening because it's like the garden fair or the quilt show, and those have been canceled. But I'm in a book group, and I have been able to, we've been doing it by Zoom, and that was a decision that was made by the group at the end of last year. I'm chair, so I'm working on that. And what it has allowed is some of our longtime members who are no longer living in the neighborhood are able to participate. We've got 2 people who are staying out the pandemic at their retreats in Michigan. And we have another member who is who has moved into a retirement community that's out in the suburbs. so we could all get together. And we have another member who is caregiving, and it's much easier for her. So I have been able and then our yoga class, we have one member at least that checks in from New Hampshire. So so it's really been a lifeline for me. I mean, I do miss getting together with people and putting the garden fair together and stuff like that. But on the other hand, this is what we have, and it has some advantages.
I agree. I mean, it is what it is, isn't necessarily a bad thing. And we need to get the joy we can get.
Jerry, you had a comment or question?
Yes, I had a doctor's appointment today at Northwestern, and so I made it a destination. I showered, shaved, got dressed up, wore my nice shoes, and then I had the time. So there were 3 or 4 places that I stopped at Northwestern on the mezzanine to buy various food items that we could, prepared food that we could use for dinner. So it was like, it was an outing. And of course, talked with the people in the doctor's office and the people that waited on me. So it was like, you know, some interaction with people. It's like, oh, it was an outing. I wasn't stuck at home. So I made it fun.
I think making yourself, I mean, full dress and full makeup from the waist up and pink fuzzy from the waist down. But I put on perfume to do these things. Why? But
Kathy, you had a question? Kathy Williams? You're muted, Kathy.
I'm trying to unmute. Okay. Yes, I was really shattered when we had to go into shutdown, because I used that as a way to, I was always planning get-togethers so I could keep up with my grandkids. And then all of a sudden we couldn't get together. And so I started this very ambitious thing whereby, since they live in suburbs, I would go in my car to one group and they would be on the sidewalk. I'd drive to the other place and I'd spend my whole Saturday driving around, right? And it got so that where the gasoline prices were going up, you know, and then we had a summer where we thought, oh, this is over, we can get together again. But what I hadn't realized is my grandkids are aging. They're not necessarily at home. They're not going to come with their parents to see me. And so speaking to those of you who have spoke for Zoom, what I really discovered is I had to start using text. So now I text my grandkids. I can text them all at once and give them the little bon mots that grandparents give to grandkids that they really don't want to hear, right? And I can encourage them to communicate with me. So, I mean, we're all having to learn a lot more about how to use technology effectively. And that's been a plus for me.
Ellie,
you'll
had your
hear
hand
them
up again?
telling their friends those bon mots, and you'll know they listened.
Right.
You'll hear you coming out of their mouths. It's great.
Ellie, did you raise your hand again? You're muted, Ellie.
A number of people have mentioned the advantages of Zoom, and I have participated in a number of Zoom groups, but I haven't actually set up a Zoom group. And I'm wondering, could people who have done that say how difficult is that to do and how do you learn to do it?
I don't find it particularly difficult, but what I found was easier was the Facebook portal. We got one for my Aunt Terry. I set up her Facebook account. I handle her account. We mailed her the thing. One of my nephews hooked it up on her side, and I can just dial her and talk to her whenever I want to, or whenever she wants to, because she's busy. but it's just so much easier than anything else we could find. And it wasn't that expensive, and it works just fine. She can even hear it better than she can hear the phone. I don't know why that is.
I would say my experience has been that one of the reasons I think Zoom has caught on so much and so widely is that it is fairly easy to use and doesn't require a lot of detailed technical skill. But Ellie, if you want to chat offline, I can help you with that.
Okay, thank you, Barbara.
Yeah.
Could I just add one thing? I'm going to have to go very soon, which is that I needed some help in getting some rides to medically oriented appointments and so on in recent times. And I went to the Hyde Park Village for help with their volunteers who give people rides. And one of the tremendous discoveries of this whole experience for me has been how amazingly generous and kind all of you people are. And when you reach out, people are incredibly helpful. And I am so grateful. I know Susan Alito is here and other people at the village who have just been marvelous. So thank you. And that has made a tremendous difference to me in terms of keeping my mood up. And I wish I could do the same. I don't drive, so I can't drive anybody. But if there's any way I could help people, I would love to do so. It's so uplifting to have such kind neighbors. So thank you.
Susan, unmute yourself.
I just want to respond to Ellie about Zoom, how to set it up and all of that. I just discovered that they give tutorials 3 times a week on Zoom, and you can sign up for the day and the time. And if you go to the Zoom website, you can find out when they're giving those, because I want to learn how better to set up Zoom meetings also. And it sounds to me like, according to the tutorials, they're pretty basic, and that's where I'm at. So that is one suggestion for you in order to be able to master it better.
Thank you. I'll try that.
Susan, were you trying to say something?
You can't
Susan
learn
Alito?
on YouTube.
Well, I was
Yeah, that's the truth.
I was just responding. If you can't drive, you can always make phone calls, and this is
That's true. True.
So before our time gets away from us, Dr. Woodson had some resources she wanted to put up, a few slides that she thought you all might find helpful. I think now might be a good time to do that so we don't run out of time.
Okay, let's see where we are here.
And while you're putting that up in the chat, I'll just comment on the one. I'm so grateful for Zoom and FaceTime, because I've been able to keep, everybody hears me moan and groan about the fact that my grandkids are in China. And I would say, if and when they ever see me again, they won't recognize me because they're used to seeing me in a box.
Grandma rays prevail, though. They'll know. For those of you that are caregivers, I have a couple of new resources that will help you give excellent care without killing yourself. To Survive Caregiving is a general overview about caregiving, and the doctor is in answers specific questions that people asked me over the 40 years of my career that were too specific for a general resource, but I think you will find help there, particularly how to take care of yourself while you're doing this. For those of you who are interested in some of the introspection that I was talking about that COVID started, I have a book that I wrote for my daughter when I thought she was dying, and I plastered these things all over her hospital wall. She's just fine right now, thank God. But it turned into a book, and I did so many book clubs and women's conferences virtually, and people asked for a discussion guide. So the workbook and journal is going to come out in February of this year. But the sections are about how to be kinder to yourself, how to teach other people to treat you better. and how to face trials with GRACE. It's a mnemonic that it talks about specific things that you can do about resilience, but also about really creating joy for yourself. And if any of you just like fun, I also write fiction. What the Mirror Sees came out in 2015, and it's just pure mind candy for smart women. It is just a lot of fun. And as you can see on my logo, this woman is juggling all kinds of stuff, and what she forgot is to take care of herself. So What the Mirror Sees is out. The Sounds of Cajun Spice is coming out in the fall, but it's just for fun. If you just want to escape, that's what this is. And I just really, really appreciate having the opportunity to share that with you. You can reach me through my website. I put that in the chat. And don't hesitate to call. If you have feedback about this presentation, please give it to me, because that's how I know how to get better. And I thank you.
Any last question that, burning question that anybody has for Dr. Woodson before we conclude today? I don't see any hands going up. Well, and we're just about at our 1 o'clock time. So I really want to thank you, Dr. Woodson, for your inspiring words and kicking us off in this new year and helping us cope with what's this? We're going to soon be going into year 3 of the pandemic. So thank you very, very much for all of this.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Your words were inspiring and very helpful. So, so that concludes our program for today.